For weeks to weeks now, and especially following the elections in the Hindi heartland states, you've been hearing a near unanimous view that the 2024 verdict is sealed. Is it sealed? We've also been hearing that Narendra Modi is cruising towards another big victory and cementing his legacy as only the second Prime Minister after Nehru to win a third term in this country. Now, viewer, you know me. I'm not a political animal or a psephologist. Some people believe I am. So I don't really make predictions about elections. But what I can see, and what millions can probably also see, is that Modi towers above our current political class. Not just because he is an extremely popular politician with an uncanny ground connect, but very importantly because the opposition has, for 9 years now, uninterruptedly fueled the cult of Narendra Modi. Let me repeat that in case you've heard me wrong. For 9 years now, the opposition has had an active part in uninterruptedly fueling and creating the cult of Narendra Modi, and for that, Modi should in part be thankful to the opposition. Let me repeat it in another way, a third way for you. Modi owes his stature in many ways to the words and actions of an opposition that even 10 years later hasn't quite figured out how to take him on and deal with him. In the beginning years after 2014, there was a sense of shock and dismay over the scale of the so-called tsunami, which was understandable, given that Modi had led the BJP to a victory that few had imagined possible. It is understandable equally that the opposition campaign against Modi after his first term between 2014 and 2019 was one that was largely crafted from negativism, a clarion call to the voter that the electorate had screwed up by giving Modi a chance at all, that his ideas of innovative governance had disrupted structures with things like demonetization, and that he ought to be bundled out so that the familiar old ways can return to the seats of power. The Congress even garnished its wholly negative campaign with the suggestion that the Prime Minister is a thief, labeling him, the Chaukidar, as a chore over allegations of corruption in the Rafale deal. The electorate, as you saw, viewer, contemptuously rejected the Congress party campaign, allowing Modi to storm back to power with even greater numbers. There are many in the opposition who explain the 2019 victory as a Balakot victory, that the opposition stood no chance against muscular nationalism, that the mood had turned. In my view, this is delusion of a very damaging kind. To think that India's response to the Pulwama terror attacks could color an entire electorate in a national election is to admit total cluelessness about how India really votes. It is to fool yourself about what you're really up against as the opposition. It is to take your eye off the real target. It is to alleviate your sense of what is really ahead of you. If you're going to craft your next steps with the assumption that there's nothing you could have done post-Balakot, then you have failed in your duty as an opposition, as the opposition did indeed do in the run-up to 2019. Of course, the BJP has been defeated in some state elections. They're not invulnerable, they're not undefeatable, but I'm talking about the figure of Modi himself. If a Prime Minister enjoys abnormally high popularity ratings a decade into office, amidst what would normally be heavy-duty incumbency headwinds, then there are two possibilities, viewer, and I'm sure you'll agree with me. Both can be true at the same time as well. Number one, that he has been a good administrator, smart with his politics, and delivered admirable governance to the electorate. The second possibility is that no matter what Modi has done, good or bad, the opposition simply hasn't managed to offer an alternative to the figure of Modi. I'm not for a moment suggesting that Modi needs to be taken on by another Modi-like figure and that the opposition has failed to find a face. History has shown that faces aren't always necessary to take on even very popular prime ministers. You know who I'm talking about. But the opposition has been so hypnotically obsessed with the figure and the individual Modi the personality of Modi, the cult of Modi, it has simply not spent enough time crafting a narrative that provides an alternative vision for India. If you're going to ask the electorate to vote out Modi, it cannot all be negative. It has to be about, okay, if not Modi, then what? It has been so immersed for a decade in attempting to paint Modi as a corrupt crony that the opposition has forgotten the legacy of corruption and crony capitalism that was carved out of independent India by the very opposition parties now pointing those fingers. First it was Rafale, now it's Adani. Those who literally invented Indian crony capitalism and laid the foundation for the overlap of big business with politics are now on the streets crying blue murder. It's not about whether these allegations are true or not. It's about whether these parties are in a position to be taken seriously by the electorate as they point those fingers. I am not for a moment, viewers, suggesting that these allegations cast by the opposition don't merit debate or investigation, and investigations are indeed happening. I'm only saying that the opposition has missed the bigger picture, that utilizing all your machinery to discredit one individual leaves you with precious little bandwidth to paint an enticing picture for your voters. Which is why when you zoom out of the current Indian political battle space, it looks like a scattered bunch of frustrated, out-of-power netas attempting to drag down a very popular leader. The mechanics of democracy mean that elections are your only barometer for success, like it or not. And why not? Since when did elections become such a bad thing? Since when did elections become a bad word? Elections are literally the will of the people, which is why it truly stupefies me that the Congress's next Bharat Nyaya Yatra in 2024 from Manipur to Mumbai is being described by every Congress leader as a yatra that has nothing to do with politics or elections. Nothing to do with politics? Seriously? Since when did politics become an undesirable thing in this country? Since when did elections become something to not target? If you're in politics, elections are your test. It's like an annual exam. Why be so defensive about acting politically towards an approaching election? Surely voters want to know that you are interested in winning an election, that you're interested in being battle ready, that you're focused on actually delivering the goods. Politics is the brain, the liver, the connective issue of every democracy. Or is the opposition openly ceding even election and political space to Modi and the BJP? I know what some of you may be thinking. Shiv is just indulging in another round of opposition bashing. But you, viewer, know me. You and I know each other. We have a relationship. I don't take sides, and I certainly don't owe allegiance to any party or leader, which is why I remain eternally perplexed over how a large number of seasoned politicians still expend all of their energies trying to dismantle the cult of Modi directly, rather than invest in a vision that can at least begin to give the electorate a second option. This is the third time I've said it in this take, because that is how little of it is actually happening.